all day at the exhibit hall tomorrow. So we hope to see you there. And for just a reminder, so I don't forget, if you have any questions while we're live, please use the live link on our website at theicn.org/leadership, and then follow the link to that live stream because that's the chat we're monitoring. If you have questions on social media, we won't ignore you there, just we won't be able to answer till after we are finished with our live stream. So any questions you have while we're chatting, just feel free to hop right over to the website and send those our way, and we will happily discuss them. So, conflict, it's an interesting topic because no one really likes it, but we know that it's just inevitably part of the workplace. And I think it's extremely important to note that conflict itself is not inherently bad. We just have to make sure that we are very conscious in how it's dealt with, and we want to make sure that we deal with it properly, timely, to avoid any further issues. And that way, if we resolve it in an effective manner, it will also lead to personal and professional growth. So to get started, if this is your first Chat and Learn, welcome. If you're a seasoned professional, you know that we just like to have conversations and talk about all the things that people experience out in the field and talk about real world ways that we can address these particular topics. So I would love to just get started with just both of you. Patrick, Dala, tell me about how you view conflict.
Patrick, you want to take it away? You want me to take it away?
No, you're our guest. Go ahead.
Okay.
Take it away.
All right. So I've thought a lot about this in the past few days, and I don't necessarily see conflict as always as a negative thing, as Dr. Danielle has mentioned. Sometimes you need those frictions and conflict to do better. Iron sharpens iron, and that comes with a little bit of conflict, and it's uncomfortable for people a lot of times. So it's important to, I feel, communicate clearly, right? We often say communication is the death of all things, but it's not just communication. It's clear, concise expectations, letting the people around you know, whether it be your coworkers, your family members, spouses, friends, this is the vision, or this is what the end goal is, and here's the criteria. That way there's no ambiguity. And if there is conflict, then it's a healthy conflict. I think it could be done better this way instead of, why are we doing this? It's always, we've never done this before. We've always done it this way. I encountered that a lot in my first few months as a K-12 nutrition director. And it's hard in this industry. You have some people that are lifers, and that's wonderful in one hand because their heart is in it and they're in it for the right reasons. But on the other hand, you don't leave any room for growth. So I did not shy away from having those conversations and identifying the spaces I needed to be in to make sure that we were having healthy conflicts. We talked about, why are we doing something differently, or why are we using one recipe versus 20 for the same soup? So all of those things, I feel like are healthy conflicts. You do have some difficult ones, and in that point, you have to kind of identify the root cause of what that issue really is, and sometimes you can resolve it and sometimes you can't.
And Dolly, you kind of touched on this, but I feel like sometimes the best ideas come from conflict. Sometimes when you have that conflict, sometimes you get great ideas out of that. And I think conflict is inevitable. It's not something we can really get past. It's always going to happen. And we kind of have to look at it as a learning opportunity. How can we grow from this? How can we learn from this? We may not always agree, but everybody brings different perspectives and different ideas. And I think this is something we touched on in Managing Personalities Chat and Learn last month. Everybody brings something to the table. So listening to that, and even if it does cause some conflict, working together to see how we can figure that out and make it work for all of us.
Absolutely. Another thing that comes to mind is identifying the fact that we need diversity. And diversity is so many different things. It's not any one equation, right? It's diversity of personalities, of generational gaps, or, not just cultural, but also just preferences. There are people that are morning people and that's great. And then there are people that are not. And if you dare wake them up in the morning, it, there's a lot to pay for it. So you have to identify where the conflict root cause is coming from. And once you do that, you can truly have a healthy communication about why is the conflict happening. And, sometimes it's because you just need to come in an hour later. Like, I need more sleep. I've had that conversation with a couple of my team members before. Like, I'm just not a morning person, and being here at 6 in the morning really doesn't work for me. Well, okay, can you come in at 8? Would that work? And, and the eyes get super big, and it's like, oh, I can do that. It's like, of course, like, we still need help from 8 to 4 instead of 6 to 2. And so just making that small shift just changes the whole perspective. And a lot of times the person in the conflict could be so into their emotions that they don't even see an out. They just get frustrated, and I don't like it here, and why are we doing all these things? And more likely than not, more times than not, it's just a simple fix. Minimizing the time one is not it's not what I'm trying to say, but it's something simple like coming in 2 hours later. You get someone who's happier, who's awake, who's had time to adjust to waking up, and that person comes in happier, and their teammates notice and the students notice, and it just creates a much healthier environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just hearing both of you speak, something that we've talked about in each one of these chat and learns now is how important it is to have a safe space. So to have a safe space to even have the conversations to start with. Because, you both said it. Sometimes it just takes a conversation. It's not always easy. And I think that is one of the hardest things for most people. And I say that even for myself. You have to just be willing to hear and have those conversations. They're not always fun. They're not always easy. But being able to just listen and actually hear these different perspectives and take time to think and be like, oh, just because Danielle feels this way doesn't mean that I'm the only one that has the solution and answer. I need to be willing to listen to others and be like, oh, that's a great idea. And I love that example about switching the times, like something so simple, but I know most people would never even consider that. And so that is a fantastic example, and makes me smile because I am not a morning person. So it's nice to think of alternatives and ways that we can work around some of those personality issues, like you said, because it's not even, those are assets. They should not be burdened. Everybody brings something to the table, and it's those unique characteristics that make us be the amazing teams that we are. And so I am going to, you kind of talked about this, like always, we have questions we kind of want to talk about. We've had a few people submit questions. Like I said, you still are welcome to submit them. We'll be able to talk about them. But the question is conflict resolution possible where everyone is happy? What do you guys think about that?
I'll take it, Patrick. Okay. So my menu coordinator and I were having this conversation about this very question. And it really depends on the situation. If someone wants to work 4 hours and get paid for 8, obviously that's not going to work. However, a lot of times what we find is if someone is unhappy in a space, there's a lot more to it. It could be something going on at home. It could be they don't get along with a specific leader or team member. So what we try to do is identify their strengths and find a space for them in a different kitchen that works to their strengths and also allows for their opportunities of growth to really be worked on. You have different styles of managers in every kitchen. You have some, ruling with an iron fist, like this is it, and there's no questions about it. And some people work really well with that, and they need that direction. And some people more likely want to be left alone. They want to know what they need to do and just be left alone. And so we have those varieties of leaderships within our district. And so instead of losing an asset, what we try to do is be very clear with them. Okay, you're saying that here you're not being given the opportunity to shine and to really show or showcase your talents. So we're going to try you at this school if you would like. And of course, there's always a choice. What I tell my team all the time, this is not jail, nor are you doing community service. This is a job. So if you don't want to try this, you don't have to. But here's a solution that may work really well with, what issues we have in front of us right now. And more times than not, they really like the new school. They just get so stuck in, this is where I've been, this is where my babies are, the students, I get to know them. But on the other hand, you're super unhappy for one reason or the other. And so trying them at another school with a different style of leadership really works well. I think we've only had one team member in the last year that just did not work out anywhere. And in that space, she left unhappy, and we weren't necessarily happy either, because what I tell them all the time is, I don't want to lose you. No one is out here to get you. We want you to stay and to be a valued member of our team. I mean, losing someone all the time means losing resources, waste of time and money, and having to retrain someone or having to recruit someone else. I mean, it's just a lot that goes with just having a body in the kitchen. And we have very high expectations for the people in our kitchen. So the pre-training, the hiring them as a sub and getting them up to par with what we need them to have knowledge of in the kitchen is a lot. And so I tell them, I will do everything in my power to help you be successful and to help you find a happy place, because no one deserves to come to work unhappy, right? Like, this is my mission. So I don't see it as work. I see it as my mission. And so it works out for me that I love what I do. And it doesn't bother me if I have to take work home once in a while, or if I have to turn around and come back after I've left one day. It doesn't bother me because I see it as my mission. But not everybody needs to be that way, And I also remind my team, like, you have lives. I don't expect you to stay here all day. Like, set up things in your routine that allows you to do your job well, to take care of our babies, which is priority number one, but also allows you to leave everything at the door when you walk away. Like, you don't need to take anything in this kitchen with you when you go home to your families. When you come in, do the same courtesy. Don't bring anything from home into the kitchen, but in the same hand, don't take anything with you. You need to have that separation of life, personal life and professional life, because otherwise everything starts to melt together. And then when you have issues with one, and then now everything is an issue. So to answer the question, no, you can not always can you resolute a conflict with everybody happy. You're going to have different personalities. So if somebody's already set their mind that they're unhappy and that they don't want to be here, you can't change their minds. And all you can do is offer them support and provide them all of the avenues they need to be successful. And if they choose not to, then you just have to help them find their happiness elsewhere.
That was a great answer. So this one was a little more difficult for me to answer, because in reality, we hope everyone walks away happy, but we know that's not really going to be the case. I think changing the mindset to making sure that everyone feels like they were heard and that they got the chance to say their piece. Because like you said, sometimes you have to just move someone around, or they have to go somewhere else. I know I had a staff member, I had two that could not get along. I had two serving lines. And so it just made it easy as, okay, I'll move you to this serving line. The person that's working that serving line to the serving line you were working on, and it resolved that conflict. So I think just taking the time and just making sure that everyone is heard and everyone feels like they were able to say what they needed to say, that's really what you want to get out of it, rather than everybody leaving. Because I don't think that would
And I think just you both, like that, you answered it so well, but the one thing that stuck out, and as a side note, we'll go down this rabbit hole just for a minute, because I do think it's important to remember, people have lives outside of work, and people have lives at home that doesn't include work. And we have people that are great at compartmentalizing and that they can separate and not bring it. And then we have some people that just can't. And sometimes it just depends on the day. And it's really important to remember, like you said, sometimes it's just talking to people and listening to them, because what you're assuming may be the problem may not even be remotely close to what's causing it. And it does take time. And it's so important to listen to people. You know, these chat and learns are based on the job aids that we created. And that's one of the principles we talk about as far as the steps in conflict resolution, is to actively listen and to understand all sides and take time to really just soak it in and be like, all right, let's put the whole picture together. Not just he said, she said, my side, her side, and actually look at, all right, so what's the root cause? What's actually going on? And I think something as small as, like you're saying, switching people where you're just not interacting because some people just don't jive. I know even for me, hearing the word conflict and conflict resolution, we think of these bigger, higher level issues automatically. Like that's kind of where our brain usually goes, is it goes the negative before even thinking. Some things are just small. And a lot of times, if we can address these smaller issues before they turn in and snowball to the bigger issues, we're able to avoid a lot of conflict at that very base level without it turning into something more. And so I'm going to ask the next question. I was going to end on it, but I kind of want to ask now, and then we're going to sidetrack to some of the questions that were submitted, because I think that would be a better use of our time since how we've been talking. So I would love for each of you, you gave examples, but I'm going to ask you to think of another one. Give us an example of a conflict you've had that you feel like just best possible scenario, like, and walk us through it.
I can take this one. So I think I was always fortunate to really have an amazing staff where we can kind of already talk through situations and handle that as a team. So we really didn't let it get too far out of hand. But like I said, I think one of my best, examples is when I had the two people that could not get along. And so we ended up it was as simple as just switching the sides that they worked on. And that really made a difference. And I also had another time where I had someone that was kind of doing the same thing every day, getting tired of the same thing every day. So I moved them to the serving line and had them work the serving line and put someone else on the cash register. And it really, really made a difference on how happier they became. And they were actually a phenomenal line server, like did a great job. So I think you can, sometimes you can just, as simple as, like we said earlier, just move someone around and maybe just give them a different perspective, rather than just looking at the computer while you're, typing in lunch numbers. I think that really makes a difference and can really, make a difference in both them and how things work out at the workplace. So that's fine.
That's awesome. I too have very similar instances where I've been in this district this is my 5th year now. In the beginning, we had people that just wanted something different, but didn't know how to vocalize it. And they weren't used to anyone moving them around. Well, I had come from the private sector where, you don't know where you're going to work day to day sometimes. So to me, moving people around to find them a happy place, it just came naturally because of that experience. But it was mind blowing to other people. And at first there was a lot of resistance and it was, what are you doing? You don't know what you're talking about, but once they got to try other places, it was like, oh my gosh, I never knew it was like this here. Like, I really love it here. And so just moving people around, even not permanently, like sometimes just to give them a chance for a break and to try something new, sometimes resolves that issue. Most recently, I had like a phenomenal worker, oh my gosh, it's a phenomenal worker, just really comes in every day at 100, right? She's going to get everything done. She's going to take care of everything. Well, she had recently been disillusioned with a couple of her team members that she felt weren't pulling their weight. And there was some other things going on in her personal life. And so it just kind of all coupled together and she just didn't know how to handle it. Well, that became a thing. And I had actually left the country for a couple of weeks and I came back and it was like this beautiful group now all of a sudden had all of these issues. And so I spent 2 hours interviewing everyone and they all had very similar complaints, and this employee used to be amazing, and now they're not as amazing, and they're not talking to us, and it's rude, just all the things you can hear. And so as I sat back in my office, because I recorded everything and I listened to the interview again, so I wasn't actively trying to interact, I was just listening. I just figured it out that, like, hey, we can't afford to lose this employee, but this team is no longer jiving. So as a precautionary method, that very next day, I sent that employee to a different kitchen that actually needed help. And it was like a match made in heaven, and I was like, man, like, I had nothing to do with this. This was divine intervention. It just happened to be. And had a conversation with how we deal with our feelings. And, if we're disappointed with something or someone, or we're just stressed at work, we don't yell and shout and throw dishes around. Like, that's not how we behave. And she was very remorseful, and she cried and said, I'm aware, I'm ready for any punishment you have to give. And, my punishment was, I just need you to every day reflect on how you are doing that day. That was her punishment. And she couldn't believe it, just tears streaming down her face. And so she's at a new school now, and match made in heaven. The management loves her, the staff, the teachers, the students, just absolutely amazing. But it's a smaller team, less people to deal with. It's with an elementary school where, the babies are smaller, and you can't help but to smile when you go in an elementary school because they're just so precious. So, it's identifying what's the root cause for that person. I try to not allow my personal feelings, perspective, or past experience to affect any decision that I make. I don't always succeed, but I try really hard to, anytime I'm dealing with a major situation with my team, to really sit and give them my attention and talk it over with them and repeat things back to them and say, this is what I'm hearing. Am I hearing it correctly? Are you telling me this and this is how I'm receiving it? Am I receiving it the right way, or am I getting it all wrong? It goes back to Dr. Danielle, your statement earlier of, are people feeling heard? Are they feeling seen? Do they feel appreciated? And a lot of times it's just a 5 or 10 minute conversation about, how are you doing? Or, hey, how is that issue going for you at home? And, just a small little, how are you doing today? And it doesn't have to be a half a day, and I tell my team all the time, I am here for you no matter what you need, whether it be professionally or personal, but my expectations for you are X, and I'm very clear with them. You can have me 100%, like, I will give you 100% of my effort, but when you come in, my expectation is that you give you 100%, and that you treat the first kid and the last kid that comes to the line with the same love and respect and quality of service. So they know my expectations are clear. They know that I'm not going to, soften away from it. My expectations are always clear, and they know where they're coming from. So when they come to me and they say, I need your help, they trust that I'm going to help them, whether it be, recently I had a team member asked me for help with her student, who is also part of our district, is having some learning disabilities, and it's a similar disability that my daughter has. And so she came to me and she says, I need help personally instead of professionally. So I set up time for her. I made some phone calls with her, and it didn't take me 15 minutes really, but just that little touch of, I hear you, I see you. Now this person wants to be so vested in our program that they want to join our leadership team, so it's like all these things are coming out of just that 15-minute conversation. And it goes back to clear expectation. It's not that they necessarily love me. I'm very polarizing. You either love or you don't. There's no middle, because I'm very clear, and there's really no giveaway. And I expect quality of service and quality of food for our babies each and every day. I don't care how they got to school that day. You treat them with love and respect, and you feed them, and you make sure that their needs are met. And then after that, we can worry about your personal business. But if you're going to come in here and your job is to take care of my babies, my expectation is that you do that first. Then I'll take care of you after they're taken care of. So I think that also gives them some room to really have confidence in what's expected of them and their job performance, and knowing that if they ask for something, that they're going to be heard.
Absolutely. I love that so much. And the one thing that just kept in my face the whole time you were talking, conflict's not a one size fits all. And that's, I think, why we keep talking about listen, just take in the situation, because you can't just be very prescriptive of if XYZ happens, then this is exactly what we're going to do to fix it. It's going to be different in every single case because we are so unique. And all of that does come into effect when we are having any type of conversation, whether it be about something going well, something that's going wrong. All of that's going to affect how we handle it. And so you both in your examples talked about it, but one of the specific questions that we had submitted, so I want to ask it, is talking about clicks in the kitchen. And so if you needed to give some quick advice, because again, we said we can't be prescriptive, but as a general note, how would you recommend to avoid cliques forming and how to just truly and foster that teamwork environment?
Move them. Just move them. It's plain and simple. Don't treat them like kids, because they're not. They're adults. They need the respect of being treated like adults. But you say, hey, as a leader of this kitchen, I need to make some changes, and I need you guys to switch around and learn all, one of my key rules is make sure that you train all of the team members in your kitchen in all areas. Like, don't just have a cashier, don't just have a cook, don't just have a dish person or whatever. Like, every team member in your kitchen should be able to do all of the necessary jobs, because what if, a flu happens and 3 out of 6 is gone? Like, now you gotta, 3 people, you have to handle all of it. And if you have a cashier and a dish person and just you as the manager, you're going to be screwed, right? And so you first of all, you need to create a rotation, and that absolutely helps with that. When we implemented rotation for our kitchens, a lot of that cliquishness kind of went away by itself. But recently I've had a manager say, hey, I have these two that's, when they get together, they get really gripey and such. And the exact thing I said to you guys, I said to her, move them. Put them in different jobs. If they can't see that them being together is creating a toxic environment, then you need to give them the favor of being their leader and moving them. You just move them. You say, I'm gonna have you somewhere else today. And if they say, but I prefer to work with this person, then you can say, I understand that. And you guys are welcome to be best friends outside of work. But when you're in this kitchen, we're all workers, and I need you to do what I need you to do to take care of our babies. And so that's the end of the story. Make it a clear, concise expectation and just keep on trucking. Don't backtrack, don't sidestep, don't give room for arguments. You just say, I appreciate that. I love that you guys enjoy each other's company and conversations, but we are at work and I need you to do X to make sure that our expectations are being followed. And when our babies are taken care of, you guys are welcome to come back together. But while we are at work, I'm going to move you. And then at that point, it is that employee's decision to either accept it or to appeal it. And if they appeal it, then they come talk to me. Majority of the time, they don't want to do that. It's like being called to mama's office, but move them, plain and simple. Explain it, be clear as to why you're doing it, and give them the respect to be heard and say, I hear you, I see you, but this is what we need for our kitchen right now. And if for some reason that is something you can't give, then maybe we need to talk about finding you a position somewhere else, either in another kitchen or finding your happiness outside of our district, because this is what we're about here. Plain and simple.
I agree with that 100%. I actually had an issue like that when I was a manager. I had 2 workers. I had one that made a very toxic work environment. So I actually had to ask for her to be moved out of the kitchen, because sometimes you can't just move them to another location within the building. You've got to sometimes get them out of there. And when I did that, it was like night and day. The relationships in there changed so differently. So sometimes you just have to move them. You don't want to, but this person had been there since the school was built and felt like everything that happened had to come through them first. So they had to learn that, that doesn't always happen. So yeah, sometimes you just have to move them.
Perfect. So, we plan to keep these around 30 minutes. We want to be short, sweet, but so informative. Have one more question that was submitted. This is the last question. I won't throw any surprise questions out this time. But they're asking, I'm going to find it so I can actually read it to you guys. So we are constantly getting new updates and new directives. As a leader, how do you relay these changes to your staff and try to avoid conflict from the announcement?
I can take this one. I think going back to the last two live streams, what we said before is tell them the why, because everyone wants to know why. Why are we doing this? And so explaining to them, here's why we are doing this, reminding them that we do it for our students, that that's why we are here. And then if you need help communicating those changes, maybe do it through a staff meeting or create a short video. Or if you are friends with people down in the art department, maybe they can help you create posters if you're not, very artistic, which I'm not. So, having someone create something visually so you could post it on the wall and people can see it and know, this is what we're doing and why we're doing it. I think that's a great way to think people about it.
One thing that I brought from my previous life, my previous professional life, was startup meetings every day, right? So after you feed breakfast and you sit down with your team and you guys are having breakfast together and you say, hey, we have X, Y, and Z. It may not be a whole lot, but just the fact that you are communicating with them makes them feel vested and that you trust them. And that was a long, hard fought road. Not everyone felt that they had the time. And I'm like, but you sit down and eat breakfast every day. Why don't you just sit down together and having your opening day meeting when you're having breakfast, because we allow them to sit down for 15 minutes for breakfast and eat breakfast before they get jumped on for lunch. We are in the food industry. So I really believe that giving our team members a space to sit and eat together fosters a lot of camaraderie. And so we have managers meeting once a week, unless there's a holiday or whatnot. And so my managers come to my office and I walk them through all of the financials. I walk them through, and I create charts. So, some people learn visually, some people can just look at the numbers and grasp everything, but that's not everybody. So I have it both. I have listed in numbers and I have in a graph format, and we go over different bills that's coming in and equipment that have been replaced. Pretty much anything and everything that involves our department, I go over with my managers. If I'm getting ready to go to a conference or if somebody's getting ready to go out for surgery and we need to make sure that we are supporting that kitchen, I make sure to tell them in those meetings, all of the details, but then also to remind them, this is not for you to, observe it here and forget it. Like, it's not one ear out the other. Like, you need to go back and you need to share this with your teams. And it's very apparent, the managers that are very timely in their information sharing with their teams, because their teams respond really well. And a lot of times I've been very surprised to walk through the kitchen and have an employee say, hey, I was thinking about doing X to generate some revenue because so-and-so told me that we were on the bottom of the revenue scale this month. So to me, like, that just, I could just like die happy, fat, and sassy, at that point in time, because it tells me that they are they're invested and they are paying attention, and that they know, like, no one person runs this program. It is a village, it is a team, it is an effort of every single person that comes in, that takes out the trash, that receives the stock. My office manager who pays the bills, or our menu coordinator. There's no one person in our program that runs it all. And I try to make a point to them, to really focus on that. And so when we have something new coming down from state or the federal government or the district at large, I can say, hey, this is happening because of the why, as Patrick has said. This is the why behind this. It may change in a couple of months. We don't know. But guess what? We are professionals and we're going to make it happen. And then if something, comes up at the end of the day that it's not working out, then we can speak to it. But we can't speak to something and say that it's not working if we have not given it a chance. Like, that's my biggest preach, I think, is like, give me your best try. And if you've given me your best try and it's still not working, then okay, we'll try something else. But you can't tell me something doesn't work if you haven't even put forth any effort. So that, given that the why and giving them the expectations of working through the why has really worked out well for us.
Absolutely. What a great way to end. That's great advice. Both of you. Thank you so much. And so, as always, we appreciate our viewers. We appreciate all that you're doing out in the field. We are here to support you. Reach out if we can help you anyway. And Donna, thank you so much for being our guest. We loved having you. You were wonderful. And next month, we're taking a holiday break. So the Chat and Learns will be back January 19th at 3 p.m. Central Time, and we will be talking about recruiting new employees. So tune in and we will see you then.
Bye. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone.